Hey guys, this is AI Gaming 1776 and we are looking at part 3 in a series where I discuss the performance of the GTX 1070. This is the division. We are doing the benchmarking test right now and I'm going to talk to you while the benchmark goes through. As you can see, we're doing fairly well. And let me talk to you about why this is a series, okay? I am someone who has come from two different 980 Ti's and started gaming with the 1070 for the benefit of this channel. Obviously, if you own a 980 Ti, there's not a whole lot of a reason for you to buy a 1070 because even when the 1070 is doing a better job, it's not enough of a better job for you to drop that money. Okay, let's be honest. If you have a 980 Ti, really you should go for a 1080 if you want to see an improvement with a single GPU. Now, with all of that said, what I've realized when I've been testing the 1070 is sometimes the 1070 performs a little bit better than a 980 Ti, as it should, and sometimes it performs worse. Alright, so there's the results. Pause if you want to see them. We did just benchmark the game. The card is overclocked. The CPU, which is a 6700K, is also overclocked. Alright, so that's the results. Let me show you. We are at 1440p, full screen, 144 Hz monitor. Brightness is at 55%. Graphics are here. Get ready to pause if you need to. Pause if you need to. We're about to go. Alright. Again, pause if you need to. Alright. Let me start the game, tell it to continue, and we will continue talking about the 980 Ti versus the 1070 because that is basically what this video will be about. We've already done two parts. This is the third part. And the reason I'm doing this is because the 1070, in my opinion, has not been a slam dunk as far as cards go. When it comes to GPUs, I actually thought that the Maxwell cards were perfect. Okay, I feel like they were priced correctly. I feel like they performed correctly. When it came to the Maxwell graphics cards, that's the 750 Ti and then the 900 cards. Okay, that's the 950, the 960, the 970, the 980, the 980 Ti, and the Titan X. The Maxwell cards, in my mind, perform perfectly. And as a matter of fact, one of the cruxes that we need to get to is with a Maxwell card, if it overclocked to the 1300 range, the mid 1300s, 1360 to 1380 megahertz, which by the way, I have MSI Afterburner going and there's a lot of info up there that we'll go over. We're at 1974 megahertz though, with this 1070, all right? And that is overclocked, okay? That's better than what you're going to see out of the box with most cards probably. And this is manually overclocked, which is part of the problem. By the way, this is a Zotac Amp Edition, if you've not seen the first two videos. I have a Founders card too. But anyway, the Maxwell cards, in my mind, perform pretty much perfectly because on air, they could very easily get to the 1360, 1380 mark. And if they got to the 1400s or even 1500 or 1525 megahertz, even better. The Maxwell cards perform very well. The problem is, these Pascal cards, whether it is a 1070 or a 1080, and whether it is a Founders card or an air-cooled card from MSI or Zotac or anyone else, these Founder cards seem to have an issue with throttling, especially if they get hot, but there's other things that make them throttle too, all right? I think they do a power saving thing, and I can show that. I keep saying I'm going to make a video on it, and I really am. What happens is, if you use a 1080p 60 Hz monitor, which I have seen my 1070s actually run at a much lower clock speed than they do on a 1440p 144 Hz monitor. And the reason they're doing that is Pascal wants to save on the energy that it uses. And when you have a 1080p 60 Hz monitor, it's basically a frame rate cap. And the card actually feels like, well, hey, I don't need to work that hard to hit 1080p 60. By the way, did you see the frame rate has gone into the 50s? The Pascal card says to itself, I don't have to work that hard to do 1080p 60. So that clock speed will go down into the 1400s even. Sometimes 1100. I've seen it go down to 1100 in GTA 5. So Pascal throttles for a lot of reasons. Sometimes it's doing it to save energy, and then sometimes it's doing it from heat. And this has been pretty well documented. Even though you can only get Pascal cards for about the last 4 or 5 weeks, a lot of YouTubers have been reporting this. A lot of users have been reporting this. Sorry, I'm trying to talk and shoot at the same time, and my aim was really bad there. Apologize for that. So basically, this is part 3 in the series where I'm actually going, everything you see me doing here, we're doing live commentary, live gameplay. Everything you see me doing here, we are going to do it with a 1070, and then we are going to actually do it with a 980 Ti. And I'm going to do it live. That won't be edited together, right? Like, I'm going to do it all live so you can see that there's no trickery, there's no tomfoolery, it's all done in real time, it's all done at the same time. Alright? Now, in my first 2 videos with my 1070s, when the clock speed was in the 1900s, it would go into the 50s for the frame rate a lot. And that was one of the things I complained about. And we are using a custom PCB. If you don't know, the Zotac amp has a custom PCB with 2 8-pin power connectors, and it has 2 fans on it. And I have it at 80% for those fans, and we're still at 73 degrees. That's not a great temperature. Interestingly enough, I can get as good or better of a temperature putting my Founders card at 85%, which is really, really strange. I actually expected much better than this. Here's what I want to tell you though. In the first 2 videos, this graphics card, and the Founders card for that matter, in this system, again, it's a 6700K. It's overclocked to 4.535 megahertz, or gigahertz really. It could not stay above 60 frames per second, although now it actually is staying above 60 frames per second. And this goes into one of the things that I complain about. Alright, Pascal has been very inconsistent for me. Alright, I showed you in the first 2 videos, if you want to go back and watch those, it was hitting 54, 50, it was hitting like 54, 56, 58 frames per second in this area. And before I started recording this video, it actually went down to 45 frames per second. I was doing a test run before I started the video, and when I was fighting the guys in here, it went down to 45 frames per second. So I really wanted to be able to show you that, but unfortunately, it looks like I'm not going to be able to show you that. I think this time it actually will stay above 60 frames per second, although I did feel it stutter just now and it went to 61. I think this time it might stay at 60, which on one hand, that's a good thing that it's not going below 60 frames per second, but on the other hand, the inconsistency is a problem, because you have to realize 2 different GTX 1070s in 2 different videos that I've already put up, and they were both 45-minute videos, showed very clearly that this, in this exact same spot, with these exact same settings, with the exact same graphics card, in the exact same computer, with the exact same overclocks, was going into the 50s. So there is an inconsistency problem when it comes to Pascal. Now we're up to 74 degrees even for the temperature, which is actually kind of hot for this card. Normally it at least stays in the low 70s for me. Okay, now it went back down to 73. It's looking like we're going to be able to keep this above 60 for now. I think if we played for a while, like if we played for a good 30 to 40 minutes, it would start going below 60 frames per second, but I'm not going to make you watch me play the game for that long. So I'm going to have links that show you the first 2 videos where, again, the exact same hardware, exact same game was going below 60 frames per second. And again, that is one of the problems with Pascal. It is very inconsistent. I cannot rely on it to know. See, what I do, guys, in case you don't know, if you've not watched my videos, of which, by the way, I have 500 videos now, is I show you the best settings so that you can play a game with a given graphics card, whether it is a 970, a 960, an R9 380, or if it is a 1070 like this, and I show you what settings you can play at to make a game look beautiful and get above 60 frames per second. And I do that at different resolutions: 1080p, 1440p, 4K, 720p, 900p, and sometimes I do custom resolutions. I do that because some graphics cards are not strong enough to run a game at a normal resolution, so you got to go with a custom one. Alright? Now, when you're a guy like me that makes videos like I do, you will notice like, hey, wait a minute. This graphics card is not consistently staying above 60 frames per second. And normally my 1070, I'm being honest with you, does not stay above 60 frames per second, and I've proven that in my first two videos on the matter. But right now, it looks like with these settings it will. So I'm not going to push the issue, just know that this is inconsistent. And it still kind of proves my point that sometimes this will do better than 60 frames per second, and sometimes it will do worse. Let's see, it went down to 61 a couple times, but mainly we're talking like mid 60s to the 70s for the most part for this area. And that's important because when we run the 980 Ti through here, we need to see what it gets to. And remember, we're going to do the benchmark test with the 980 Ti also. This is perfectly acceptable. If the 1070 always played these settings this well, then I would have never started complaining about it. But again, it goes back to the inconsistency. And we're at 74 degrees right now, so I'm actually surprised because in my last video I told you it needed to be above 2000 megahertz. Well, we're below 2000 megahertz and we're at 74 degrees and it's staying above 60 frames per second. Why? I honestly don't know. And normally at that temperature and at that core operating speed, it would definitely not stay above 60 frames per second. All right, so now we're going to do the Grand Theft Auto test. By the way, we are overclocked. You can see right there, this is a Zotac Amp Edition, so it's already overclocked. We did plus 27 on the core. On top of that, for memory, we did plus 98. Fan speed, we're at 80%, and power limit, we're at 120%. All right, so let's start up Grand Theft Auto 5. It's going to be interesting to see how Grand Theft Auto 5 performs because when my 1070 is doing what it's supposed to do, it also will stay above 60 frames per second. And since it did what it's supposed to do during the Division, it may very well be above 60 frames per second in this video right now. But again, in my last video, it was not. It went down to 48 frames per second. So we're doing this live and we're going to see. And what we might have to do is, if for some reason the 1070 wants to be a nice guy today and it wants to perform above 60 frames per second for all these tests, fair enough, but you might have to watch video 1 and video 2 to see what I'm talking about because it definitely will go below 60 frames per second by quite a large margin. All right, so here's our settings. 2560 by 1440, 144 hertz monitor, MSAA times 2, VSync is on. We can turn VSync off, but it is on. These sliders are all maxed out, and then everything is going to be very high or high except for post effects. All right, water and grass are high, but everything else is very high. MSAA reflection is times 2. Post effects are ultra. I feel like you need that to make it pop. So pretty decent settings. Not only that though, we have advanced settings. Long shadows on, high resolution shadows on, extended distance scaling is 3 clicks, extended distance shadows is 2 clicks. Now, unfortunately, what we need to do is we need to load the story mode, and then we actually need to load another save file. Now, if you guys know a way to just load the save file that I wanted to load, tell me in the comments. I don't know how to load a specific save file. Whenever I load up the GTA 5 story mode, it always gives me the most recent save file. But we actually want the second most recent save file because we want to fly a helicopter. Who doesn't want to fly a helicopter, right? So let's load the game. It's this one, all right? So we're going to load this up. When my GTX 1070 does not want to play ball, and when it does not want to be nice, and when it wants to perform badly and inconsistently, what I'm going to show you goes down to 48 frames per second. Not this exact area. We got to fly the helicopter first. But when it wants to play ball and when it wants to play nicely, it'll actually do the area we're going to at 70 frames per second. Now this area actually shows you why I do post effects on ultra. If you don't use ultra, this pops less. See how this is all brown, and you might think to yourself, well, it's all brown. How good can brown look? Well, to be honest with you, with MSAA on and with post effects on ultra, there is a lot of variation in the brown, and it actually pops. And look how smooth this is and how beautiful that is. See how that pops? that building does not pop as much when the post effects are on ultra. So, okay, we already went into the 50s for the frame rate, which is a bad sign. Normally, at least in this section of Grand Theft Auto 5, the frame rate stays above 70 for sure. See how we're at 72? That's because VSync is on. Alright? When this thing really wants to play ball and perform as well as it can, even with these settings, it can be higher than 72. And it goes back to how inconsistent the GTX 1070 is. Sometimes it's at 72 frames per second, sometimes it's at 80 frames per second, and sometimes it's at 54. Now when we go across this water, we're not going far, we're just going right here to that area right on the other side of the water. When we get over there, if the card's not going to play ball, it might actually go down to like 48 frames per second. But if it does play ball, it's going to be about 70, so we're going to see. Now also keep in mind, can you see the temperature right here? I know we're using a camcorder. That says 63 degrees. Okay? Interesting thing, when my Zotac, remember this is a Zotac Amp Edition, when my Zotac wants to play ball, it can actually stay in the 60s for this game. When it does not want to play ball, it goes into the 70s. Oh, frame rate went down to 40, 48, 52 already. Alright, whoa, let's not die, let's not crash. No, dang it. I'm at the beginning of the game. I'm 1.6% through the game. Look, we're 48 for the frame rate already. Keep in mind, I'm going to use a 980 Ti, and I don't want to jinx this, but there is a really strong chance that when I switch to the 980 Ti, it'll be a higher frame rate than this. The 980 Ti is supposed to be a weaker card, alright? That's why I'm showing you this in one shot, in one live video, alright? So this looks beautiful, don't get me wrong. I mean, you're seeing this through a camcorder, but on the screen, actually I have my teenage son in here. Hey, how good does this look?
Really good.
Like, would you show your friends this?
Yeah.
You think they'd be impressed?
Yeah, they would be.
Yeah. He's a teenager. He's got an Xbox One for his own personal use. His friends play Xbox One with him. Do you know anyone with a PS4?
Yeah, a couple people.
Alright, so in case you don't know, I'm pretty sure you do know, the PS4 actually can do better performance than the Xbox One in some games. I don't know if this is one of them, but this still kills the PS4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is 1440p, by the way. It's not 1080. 48 frames per second again for the frame rate. Alright? You see that? Here, let me turn VSync off and see what it goes up to. And remember, this goes back to the inconsistency, guys. The game is just so... Not the game, but the 1070 is so inconsistent. Because the 1070, when it is doing what I want it to do, instead of 48 frames per second with VSync on and these settings on, it can do 70. And in case you don't know, in GTA 5, this is actually, for whatever reason, this is a very demanding area of the map. Something goes on here that causes the frame rate to be low. And I noticed that because we can go to a different area and the frame rate will be so much better just because we went to a different area. Alright, turn VSync off. Remember, 48 frames per second. VSync. Ooh, off. Alright, VSync off. 66, 65 frames per second just from turning VSync off. But still, what I'm telling you is when this 1070 is performing as well as it can with these settings in this exact area, it can still do 70 frames per second with VSync on. So it goes back to the fact that the GTX 1070s perform very inconsistently for me. Now, when it comes to the 980 Ti, this is what we're going to install. Alright? This is a classified from EVGA. Alright? 980 Ti classified. It has... Here, let me get a... We're in a well-lit room, guys, but the camera is on auto. See, there's two 8-pin connectors, 980 Ti classified, EVGA. Alright? That is an air-cooled 980 Ti, and I'm here to tell you right now that I've been using it since September of 2015, which is, I think, 9 months ago. So I've been using it for 9 months, and it performs consistently. My 1070s do not perform consistently, and that's really one of my big issues. Is sometimes the 1070s will outperform the 980 Ti, and sometimes the 980 Ti outperforms the 1070s. And it should not. On paper, and according to everybody's reviews, the 980 Ti should lose. Alright, so with VSync off, we're still in the 60s over here, which I think most people would say the 60s are just fine. Alright? We're using MSAA times 2. We have high resolution shadows on. We have extended distance scaling. These graphics are almost maxed out, although we're in the 50s now for the frame rate. We're in the 50s now. Alright, so let's go back to VSync, turn that on. And we're almost done with the 1070. Everything we've done so far, we are going to do with that 980 Ti that I just showed you. An air-cooled 980 Ti. This is not a G-Sync monitor. This is a normal monitor. Hey, we're in the 60s for the frame rate. Graphics. VSync is on. Now I want to drive a car real quick because we're in the 60s. Again, it goes back to inconsistency. VSync is on, and now all of a sudden, instead of 48 frames per second, it went down to 58, but we've been in the 60s for the most part in this section. In case you don't know, the game will make you play in this exact area during the course of the story pretty early on. So that's what brought this area to my attention, and that's why I make sure I always test it. Because for some reason, a lot of YouTubers do not test this area. And they need to. The story of the game makes you come out here. And there are missions. I haven't played the online mode, but I've watched people online play it. Hey, the online mode, it takes you out here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because there's missions, there's like heists and stuff out here, right?
Yeah, there are.
Alright. Now we're in the 50s. But this is still acceptable. Like, this is not 48 frames per second. This is still acceptable. By the way, the GPU is finally, it's 70 there. It's flickering between 69 and 70. But I'm impressed that the GPU stayed in the 60s for as long as it did. And again, it goes back to inconsistency. Last night, I was using this exact same computer system, everything the same. And because my house was cooler, the air conditioner had been running longer and so on, it stayed in the 60s for an hour. It never went into the 70s. And I was baffled. I was shocked. Alright, 56 frames per second. We're 57, 55. I was about to get in the helicopter and go away, but every time the frame rate looks like it's going to go back down, I try to see if it will go into the 40s. Now you could make the argument, I think some of you watching might say, oh, well, sometimes when you turn VSync on and off, it actually can improve performance in this game, and that is true. And sometimes when you Alt-Tab out of the game, it can improve performance. And sometimes when you do the Windows key and the L key to lock the screen and go back into your computer, that can improve the VSync performance. However, I'm telling you, even when I've Alt-Tabbed the game and I've turned VSync on and off, and I have done the Windows key and the L key, it's still gone back down into the 40s before. Alright? So regardless of what it does during this live demonstration, it has definitely gone back into the 40s and stayed at 48 before. Alright, we're going to get in the helicopter and we're going to fly. We're going to see how it performs flying. And we're going to see how it performs in another section. By the way, notice how that says 1974 for the megahertz there. What makes that interesting is in my second video, that was at 1930 with pretty much the same overclock and the same settings and everything, and it goes back to how inconsistent this is. My founder's card, if we're honest, my founder's card would probably, I would almost bet you that my founder's card would stay above 2000 megahertz. So it goes back to inconsistency. And if we played this game for an hour, maybe even 2 hours, I think you would see hotter temperatures, lower frame rates, and lower clock speed. But the thing is, with my 980 Ti, it's consistent. Alright, and I'm going to show you that. Like, the speed stays consistent, the temperature stays consistent, the frame rate stays consistent. whereas my 1070 is not consistent, and that's what bugs me. Here, let's do a code real quick. It's 1999TURTLE. That is going to take the smoke off the helicopter, and then let us also go in here, 1999, there we go, skydive. We're going to do skydive, SKYDIVE. No, I did it wrong. Dude, is it not skydive? How do you get the parachute?
Pretty sure it is skydive.
Oh, I already have a parachute. I picked one up at the start of the video. That's the issue. I already have one.
Oh, okay.
All right. That frame rate's pretty good. We're in the 80s and we have VSync on. Now, the thing is, and I'm not sure if I show this in the second video or not, the frame rate actually was in the 50s while I was flying the helicopter. In the 50s, guys. So 50s and 80s, pretty big difference. And it goes back to how inconsistent the GTX 1070 has been for me. And that's part of why I've been disappointed. I think, and I've said this before, I think what you're going to need to do is to get a water-cooled GTX 1070, like a hybrid model, or a Seahawk model, or a Water Force model, whatever Gigabyte will end up calling theirs. I think you're going to need a water-cooled 1070 for it to always perform consistently, okay? See, I'm not here to tell you that a 980 Ti is a better card than the 1070. I'm not here to tell you that the 1070 is a terrible card. My issue is the 1070 has been very, very, very inconsistent for me. And it's just something that frustrates me. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're really just over here to show you how high the frame rate can be. Alright, we were in the low 60s with VSync on over in the desert. It should be much, much higher over here. We're going to take the helicopter up. We're going to skydive out of it. Then we are going to show you the frame rate, and then we're going to switch over to the 980 Ti. And we'll run the benchmark for the Division. We'll play the Division a little bit. We'll play GTA 5 a little bit, and I'll just show you all of this live. Now, I could have done a lot of things differently. Instead of using a camcorder, I could have done like shadow play or whatever, and I could have edited it all together so you guys would not have to see a big long video. But what I've been trying to do is like prove to you that the hardware does what I say it does. And to do that, I feel like a live demonstration is the best way to go. Now, some people are going to want to see that and some won't. And I think what I'm going to do is I might make a shorter version that doesn't show all of this. And then the people are that, because here's what happens. There's always going to be someone in the comments who says like, oh, that's not really a 1070, or he underclocked it. I had somebody in a video tell me that I underclocked the 1070 to make it look bad, right? People are always going to say that. So I feel like I need to show you, hey, it's a 1070. Here's Afterburner. It says it's a 1070. It says this is the driver. It says that it's overclocked. But that makes the video take a long time, right? So what I'm going to do is I'll probably make a shorter one, and then when people say that I'm lying or I'm underclocking the hardware or something like that, what I'm going to do is point them to this video. All right? And I've said this before in my videos, you cannot please everybody. You just never can. Some people want to see everything and some people do not. And I feel like the only way I stand a chance of trying to please everybody is if I make multiple videos on the subject, which is part of why we're on part 3 for that matter. Now, to be honest with you, I could have just left this at part 1 and part 2. But in part 2, I basically said, look, I am really disappointed in how the 1070 plays. But if I'm going to say I'm really disappointed and I'm going to say I really like my 980 Ti's, I feel like doing a live demonstration is kind of like the right thing to do. To back up my claims, if you will. I wonder if I can land on this building. I didn't really plan on it. Come on, come on. Because if I can, what I'm going to do is I'm going to then jump off the building. I don't think I'm going to make it. Might. Ooh. Alright. So now what we can do is we're up here, which is already pretty chill, pretty cool. Now we're going to do 199 painkiller. By the way, my teenage son is the one who taught me all this because I'm a noob. Cheap processing. Alright, so if you use painkiller, you don't die. So you can just jump right on off this building. I'm going to try to make it through that hole. No, I'm not going to make it. And then boom, still alive. See, this is what I wanted to show you. Look at this frame rate. We still have VSync on, in case you don't know. So let me show you. VSync, right there, it's still on. I'll turn it off in a second. So in the desert, with VSync on, we were getting anywhere from 48 frames per second to 60 frames per second. A little over 60 even. Look at this, now we're in the 80s. Downtown, now we're in the 90s. And this is legit. Here, let me take a car. Hey, actually, can I get to that car in time? No. Wow, they are really putting it on me. I was hoping to at least get a fast car. There we go. Nope. Okay, I'm about to just take whatever car I can get so I don't make you guys wait forever. Oh man, a fast car just went by. For some reason, the NPCs are doing a really good job at keeping me from getting their cars. It seems like when I use the cheats, they're more aggressive in trying to run away. So let's just take the cop car. That's going to be a much easier get. I just want to drive through the city since like we're in that underpass area, so I think that's going to artificially make the frame rate look better. So, see, we're driving around, GTX 1070, MSA ×2, the settings turned up, 1440p native resolution, and this 94 frames per second. This performance is actually perfectly fine. All right. And remember, when we were in the desert and it was in the 60s, that was perfectly fine too. It goes back to how inconsistent the 1070 has been for me. And again, I showed you in my last video, it was not this good. The frame rate was not this high. It did not play this well. And I'm kind of interested because we're in the 70s for the temperature and the core speed is less than 2000 megahertz, and yet we're having pretty good performance. Like, you can't really complain about this. But again, it goes back to how inconsistent it is. And I'm going to just say that probably until you're tired of hearing me say it. But the 1070 does not always play this well. Whereas my 980 Ti's, I mean, they're pretty predictable. Like, they will almost always play the exact same way, and it's never been an issue where, oh, well, now it won't do 60 frames per second. You know what I mean? Like, if it does 60 frames per second today, it'll do it tomorrow and the day after and so on. Whereas with the 1070, sometimes it's going to be above 60 and sometimes it's not. And that's why I'm going through the trouble of making this video. As you can see, this frame rate is just perfectly acceptable. 80s and 90s. So here's what we're going to do. It is time to put in the 980 Ti. And that's going to be somewhat of a lengthy process, so bear with me. I will try to talk to you and entertain you while I do that, but I need to shut the computer down. Here, let me get up. I need to shut the computer down to do this. I need to swap the graphics card out. That's weird. It normally does not take this long to quit the game. Normally the game quits pretty quickly. I am using Windows 10. I am using an SSD. We are using, by the way, Corsair Vengeance DDR4. In my last video, I said it was Fury HyperX, and I was wrong. I have like 3 different Fury HyperX kits, so I'm used to running that, but no, it's actually Corsair Vengeance in this computer, so I was wrong. Hardware, no, CPU-Z. Just to show you, before we shut this off and everything. Alright, just to show you, let me zoom in. Alright, no funny business. Let me pull this sucker down. There we go. 6700K. Alright, And then we go to bench, and we go to stress, and we go back to CPU. 4.529, 4.532. It gets up to 4.535, 536. All right, so it's above 4.5 gigahertz for the overclock. I'm in the habit of telling you guys everything, right? Like I share everything. Treat you like adults is how I've said it. All right, so there's the overclock. I told you before it was overclocked, and it's a 1070, GTX 1070. The driver, I don't know how well that's showing up for you, is 368.39. We can go to the GeForce Experience and see if that is the most, it should be the most recent. Like, it's probably going to make me look dumb. Like, for all I know, a new driver came out today. That would make me feel pretty dumb if it did. But oh, that's another thing. When I put in the 980 Ti, we're actually going to update the driver because, believe it or not, they use different drivers, at least according to the GeForce Experience. All right, we're waiting on GeForce Experience to load. There we go. Close. See, it just actually updated the app, which is weird because I installed it last night. Okay, install driver is up to date. I don't look like a jerk after all. See, it will check for the update. Today's date, as you can see in the corner over here, you probably can't see, is July 1st, 2016. And we just checked July 1st, 2016 for the update. And I'm going to upload this video on July 1st, 2016. So the driver is up to date. Now we're going to shut the computer down. We're going to put a 980 Ti in here. And then we are going to update the driver, which is a lengthy process. What I can do in the description of the video is annotate how you can skip past this if you want to. Here, let me ask my team. He actually doesn't know a lot about PC gaming. Do you have any questions?
No, not really.
Really none?
No.
It'll make this process more entertaining for the people if you pretend you have a question.
Well, I mean, we went over a lot of this before we started making this.
All right. So what do you think about PC gaming? Is it worth dealing with all this?
In the long run, yeah.
Oh, I forgot I have this Zotac screwed in. I gotta unscrew it. All right, so if you had a computer, do you care about 1440p or would you just be happy at 1080p?
I mean, if you're used to console gaming, the graphics, the better they look, the more appeal you have towards PC gaming.
Okay.
So since all I've ever done is console game, like the first system I ever had was a Wii. And you know, from there I had a 360 and then an Xbox One. If the graphics were better and like I put more work into it and I had 1440, I feel like I'd feel a lot more proud of it and like I'd want to play it more.
So I don't know if you know this or not, but when you play Grand Theft Auto 5 on your Xbox One, that's 30 frames per second. Do you even care about playing it at 60 frames per second, or are you like happy with that 30 frames per second?
I'm happy with 30 frames per second, but 60 frames per second and above looks a lot better.
Alright, so you can notice a difference?
Yeah. Like, just
you know,
watching you play just then, even with the problems that the graphics card is having, it looked better than it did on the Xbox.
right, and when he says that the graphics card is having problems, what he means is like I'm complaining about how inconsistent it is. Not that it's like a broken graphics card, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Alright, so the 980 Ti classified is in, the power switch to the PSU is on, the computer's starting up. Okay, so one of the reasons I'm showing you guys all of this is I'm going to show you my methodology for testing. When you change the graphics card out, what you need to consider is you're going to want to restart your system a few times. Now, a lot of you don't compare graphics cards back to back, so this will mean nothing to you. But See how that's not even 1440p? That's like 1080 or something, or it's not no, that's probably not even 1080. Here, let me shut this. Not like it's going to show you my password, but all right. Also, the screen's going to go black a whole bunch of times because the computer is expecting a 1070 to be in there, and there's a 980 Ti, and like it'll keep trying to automatically change the resolution. By the way, when the screen flickers, I think the display port on my monitor is going bad. I'll explain that in a minute. Alright, so what I do is I put the new graphics card in, I restart the computer, then I download the new driver, and then I restart the computer. If it restarts itself, I'll still restart it again anyway. So we're talking like 3 or 4 restarts to make sure everything is performing the way it should. Because the thing is without even changing the driver, games would have played on that 980 Ti. And even without restarting the computer 3 or 4 times, games will still play. Oh, you know what? I meant to go in the BIOS and show you the speed of the RAM. So here's what we're going to do. Let's do that. Let's actually do that. Where is it? Oh, see, it's flickering because it's losing its mind is what it's doing. Restart. Let's show you. It's too late. Like you guys have already seen my email, but don't spam my email or whatever, guys. Like pretend you didn't see that. All right, so we're trying to go into the BIOS so I can show you that the system RAM is at 2400 megahertz, and the reason we're doing that is I'm actually going to upgrade from the Corsair Vengeance 2400 speed to G-Skill Trident Z 3200. I've already done that actually a day or two ago, and I saw a performance increase, and so now I went back to the 2400 speed to test it again because I was surprised that I'd seen the improvement. Alright, we're XMP'd to 2400. You go down here, it should say 2400. Did I already pass it? Oh, it's got my DDR4 actually at 2472. But still basically 2400. The XMP, I know I didn't make any changes. The XMP is, it tries to find the fastest stable speed it can get me, and I guess it found 2472. It was actually just 2400 the last time before I put the 3200 speed in. That's one of the interesting things. Wendell from Tech Syndicate has talked about this. There's a lot of voodoo that goes into overclocking your system RAM, and I think my system RAM, my 2400 speed DIMMs are actually just a little bit faster now than they were a couple days ago. Just because I switched the 3200, switched back to 2400, and did the XMP again. Alright, so what we need to do is we need to go get the driver. Oh, actually, hold on. Let me show you. The GeForce Experience should tell us that my current driver, which remember, it said it was the proper driver when the 1070 was in the system. The GeForce Experience should now tell us that it's not the proper driver. Now, the thing is I have noticed, and maybe I'm stupid, but I'm telling you, look, see, it's not. A new driver is available. All right, we're gonna actually go to Nvidia's website. All right, and this is where I was saying maybe I'm stupid. GeForce.com. Is for some reason my games seem to play more stable when I go here to get the driver than when I use GeForce Experience, and that could all be in my head because that doesn't sound right, But I'm telling you, I've done a lot of back-to-back-to-back testing. So GeForce 900 series, 980 Ti, Windows 10 64-bit, start search, and I've used the GeForce Experience driver before. And it just, for some reason, not often, but sometimes like games will stutter or whatever, and I need to reinstall the driver. And I just find that I almost never have problems if I just go to Nvidia site and manually do it. Agree and download. Come on, dude. All right, so that's what we're gonna do right now. And again, I know a lot of you don't want to sit through all this. Hopefully the things I've been saying, the information I've been sharing, and so on while I've been doing this kind of makes it worth your while. Because I know this is a really long video to watch, but instead of telling you guys to just take my word for something, I show you everything. Here's how I did with the 1070. This is the driver. This is the overclock. And here, I don't know what it might show you when I tell this to run. So we're still recording. I just closed the little flap. I don't ever really pay attention to these things, but for all I know, there's some personal information I wouldn't want to share, so just in case. All right, like I said, this is the lengthy part, so let me take a drink of water. While I'm getting a drink of water, is there anything you want to say to the people? The good people of the internet?
No, I'm cool.
Well, tell them something. You want a computer?
Yeah.
I have not given my son a computer yet. I'm thinking about it. Here, we're going to do a custom... You know, I'll just leave this going. Hopefully this isn't going to show anything. I do a custom install so I can do a clean installation. Now, I know a lot of people, they don't install everything in that package, but I do, just for consistency's sake, in case one time I put a graphics card in and I forget something in the suite. So I just leave the package as it is every time. Okay, it's for a consistency reason. It's for no other reason than that. I don't want to have some stuff installed for one test and not have it installed for another. All right, so we're installing the driver. This is the lengthy part, and I really mean it. I'm so sorry that I'm putting y'all through this, because we have been doing this for like 10 minutes so far since we took the 1070 out, because I've got a clock down there that you may or may not be able to see. But no, I have not given my son a computer yet because I need everything that I've been using to test for the channel. But I think I'm going to give him an AMD system is what I think is going to happen. Hey, give me that box over there. It's on the floor.
All right.
I'll show you the new AMD motherboard I'm using. Oh, all right. Close. Hold on. All right, we got to manually restart. Okay. So this is for my FX 6300 build. This just came in and we are going to test it against... Do I have the box for the... I don't see it in front of me. Alright, so there is... Hold on, let me close this again. I've got a really crappy motherboard in my FX 6300 build right now. And I'm going to put a better... That one I just showed you in. If I'm making sense right now, hopefully I am. All right, so what I do, again, back to the methodology, is whenever I test games, whenever I test graphics cards, I let the computer fully boot up. Now, we are using an SSD. You probably noticed that earlier. There's a SanDisk SSD that is being used. It's an Ultra 2. So it's pretty fast. See, there's a little circle going right there. I wait until the computer is like good, right? Until the computer is doing its thing, it's chilling out, it's ready to go, so it can put its best possible foot forward. All right, so let's go look at the overclock that we have for the 980 Ti. Now, as you can see, I'm almost certain the driver said 368.39 when we had a 1070 in, but you saw GeForce Experience told us that it was different. So it's like a different build of this driver, if you will. All right. So the 980 Ti, it's a classified from EVGA. So this sucker is already overclocked. So we have plus 69 on top of what's already there. We have plus 58 for the memory clock. And look at this, for the fan is set for auto. Now, why does that matter? In my last video, in part 2, I complained that I have to turn the fan up on the 1070. Well, guess what? I don't have to turn the fan up on the 980 Ti, and I appreciate that. It's on full auto. All right, so the power limit's turned up, yada, yada, yada. This is clearly the same computer, but if for some reason you didn't want to believe it's the same computer, we can pull up CPU-Z again. And here, let me move Afterburner out of the way. All right, same computer, 6700K, yada, yada, yada. There should be no reason that my overclock is different. Let's do bench stress CPU. 4.532, same everything. Again, a lot of you probably do not care, but some of you might appreciate the fact that I go through all this. All right, so let's load up the division. Oh yeah, let's zoom out. There we go. And let me drink some water, get another cough drop. As you guys, if you're longtime viewers, as you guys know, I do have some sinus and throat issues that kind of make these videos difficult to make. So we need the cough drop. All right, tell the people like what, I gotta blow my nose. Tell the people what color computer you want or something. Like what color lighting and case and everything do you want?
I kind of want like a white case and then like the lights on the inside to be like orange because I really like the color orange.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with RGB?
No.
Okay, so RGB would let you pick the color orange if you get an RGB motherboard and so on. All right, full screen, 1440, 144 hertz. Oh, wow, it kept the brightness. It usually doesn't do that. All right, graphics, same settings as before. Pause if you need to, but it's the same settings as before. All right, we'll run the benchmark. All right, so what you could do, what I like to do, all right, so my son was just telling you he wants a white case with orange lights inside. What you can do in my favorite computer build that I have so far is I have a white case. It's not RGB though. It's a white case. The interior of it's white because it's a Phantom NZXT. And it has a green light. I'm using a Z77, I believe it's a Z77 board from Gigabyte Z1 Killer. And it actually has, it lights up and it has green. And then there's blue LEDs for the fans, or at least for one of the fans in this NZXT Phantom case. So it lights up blue from the fan and green from the motherboard. And it reflects beautifully against the white case. And I'm happy with that. However, if you're not happy with that, you can actually get, so let's say none of your stuff lights up. All right. You can put strips of lights inside the case and those would light the whole case up. You'll probably need to see some examples, but what do you think you would want?
I think I'd want the things themselves to actually light up.
So you don't want strips of lights?
No.
See, I'm not into that either. I like the actual components to light up. I'm really like thrilled for that. Okay, while we're talking about like vanity type things, let me show you guys something. This Zotac Amp Edition, again, the lighting in here, the camera's on auto. It's trying to look at a TV screen while a monitor. It's a BenQ XL2730Z. So the lighting is all like kind of crazy with the camera. As you can see, it's different again now. But this thing is beautiful to me. It is so much better looking than any picture has ever made it look. The fake carbon fiber looks good. It feels like quality. It looks like quality. And I don't care that that's yellow. This is a matte finish here. It feels really good. This is slick here. This is beautiful to me. And I know it looks kind of like not beautiful in pictures. I get that. I honestly think the Zotac is beautiful. The thing is, it just doesn't perform that well in my opinion. Alright, so what we're going to do is maybe in the description of the video I will have back-to-back results for the benchmark because I didn't memorize what they were earlier. Alright, going to be completely honest. Alright, so let's continue the game. We're using a 980 Ti. Let's see if we can stay above 60 frames per second. Not only that though, let me tell you this. The 980 Ti, this one right here, the fans are on auto. and they have a more quiet curve to them. As a result, that temperature can very easily get up to 81 degrees, even 83 degrees, which is much higher than the 1070. And yet we probably will not see any throttling at all. All right, probably. I could jinx it, but probably. Here, let's look at the numbers. 79 degrees, trust me, that will go into the 80s. 99% utilization, 1436 for the megahertz. That's all that really matters right now. So let's run into here. And the reason why I'm doing, or why I care so much about the 980 Ti versus the 1070 is because I've had this graphics card for 9 months and it's been consistent for me, right? The 1070 I showed you in the first two videos with the Founders card and the Zotac card, not consistent. And then in this third video, the Zotac card actually did pretty well. It probably is going to outperform the 980 Ti. Again, I'm not here to tell you that the 1070 sucks. Wow, we just went down to 52 frames per second. That is horrible. That is wretched. Yeah, I'm not here to tell you that the 1070 sucks. I'm not here to say, oh, the 980 Ti is better than the 1070 and Nvidia has fallen, right? Like, I'm not trying to pull that on you. I'm just saying that the 980 Ti has overall been pretty consistent for me. Although normally I could expect this to stay above 60 frames per second with these settings, and yet it did go into the 50s. I mean, it would go into the 50s sometimes before, but I didn't expect it to out of the gate go into the 50s like that. So that's a little bit embarrassing for the 980 Ti, especially when I'm over here praising it for consistency. And that's another thing, I don't cherry pick. I do live demonstrations, right? Like, I could edit videos to back up anything I want to claim, right? But I don't do that. Like, I show you that the components are overclocked. I show you what that clock is. I show you proof that I'm using the components I say I am. And if this game wants to make me look like an idiot, which it is, it keeps going into the 50s, then the game can make me look like an idiot. Here's the thing, I just tested this last night and it stayed above 60. So I am kind of looking like an idiot right now. Wait a minute, I got confused with Grand Theft Auto. I don't hit A to run, I hit A to do a barrel roll. Alright, let's see what happens now. Let's run around for a second. This is fairly similar performance to what the 1070 was in the second video, if I'm honest. And then that still goes to the inconsistency with the 1070. In my second video, the 1070 performed like this, going into the 50s quite a bit, but mainly being in the 60s and 70s. And then at the start of this video, this game did not go into the 50s really much at all during the recording of the video. But the 1070, you can't count on it. I'm just going to run around here for a minute. Since this has already gone into the 50s, it's not really going to prove anything to run around here for a long time trying to get it to go into the 50s, because it's already gone into the 50s quite a few times. So that is a little bit disappointing. Let me change one of the settings real quick. This is kind of petty, but we're going to put the detail level down 4%. Because if I'm honest, there's a lot of times I do turn the detail level down with the 980 Ti. And it's helped. So we were at 84% for detail level, and now we're at 80%. And sometimes I've even put it into the 70s. See, just changing it that 4% might have given us what we needed to do to get over the little hump. Yeah, now it's staying above 60. So let me run around here for a second. So, teenage son, do you care about frame rate this much? Like, even when I've been like, oh, it's in the 50s, did it look bad to you?
No, it didn't really look bad.
Okay, well, just so you know, because I've been the one controlling it, when the frame rate breaks into the 50s, not every time, but sometimes it starts to feel like crap, whereas normally it feels perfect. And this is a first world problem. It's a crybaby problem, if you will. But when it feels perfect, that's nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you spend this much money on your components, it's nice. Alright, so this is generally what I get out of my 980 Ti. Like the 980 Ti might crack into the 50s here and there. It usually stays above the 60s. It can crack into the 50s in certain ports. Earlier, the 1070 did not go into the 50s. I don't think it went into the 50s at all at the start of this video. But again, both of my 1070s went into the 50s a lot in the first two parts. So, I don't know if I'm really proving anything with this game, since it did go into the 50s here, and it kind of makes me look like an a-hole. But point being, the 1070 is not really beasting on the 980 Ti either. You know, and the 1070 is supposed to be the better card. I personally think if I was using a water-cooled 1070, it would always beat the 980 Ti, no questions asked. Just smack it around, you know what I mean? I think a water-cooled, and I could be wrong, but based on what I've seen, especially like when Gamers Nexus, when they did their water-cooled, I think it was a water-cooled 1080. They took a founder's card, made it water-cooled. I think, oh, you know what? Let me make sure that this monitor is set for 144 hertz. That could, sometimes when you change graphics cards, that becomes an issue. See how that's locked at 60 right now? It could be when we just played that game that I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. Come on, go over to 144. In the Nvidia control panel, sometimes it will take your 144 hertz monitor and actually set it as a 60 hertz monitor at the Nvidia control panel level. So let me make sure we are not dealing with that. I'm also putting us back into the same settings we had before, because when you switch the graphics card, Grand Theft Auto likes to change your settings to what it wants to. So full screen 2560 by 1440, 144 hertz, off MSAA ×2. This should all, oh, shadow quality needs to be very high. I knew there was a missing very high. Okay, water and grass are high. Let's go to advanced settings. Remember, apples to apples. Okay, so we have long shadows on, high resolution shadows on. That stuff turned up. Alright, so let's quit the game really quickly. Let me make absolutely certain that the Nvidia control panel is saying 144 hertz. 144 hertz. Alright, so we're going to start the game back up. Alright, because that can actually affect your frame rate. If you're playing a game and you know, because you've played the game, like how it should play, and sometimes it's playing differently, like worse, like way worse than it should, it doesn't feel right. Sometimes you go into the Nvidia control panel and you can see that it took your 144 hertz monitor and set it for 60 hertz for some reason. And I usually catch that happening 2 to 4 times per month. Why it happens, I really don't know. It's one of the quirks of PC gaming. But I wanted to make sure it's not happening. Alright. Anyway, I've noticed that when my GTX 1070 is playing coolly, right, like it's staying below 70 degrees, it's normally performing better. And when the ambient temperature in the room, in case you guys don't know, I keep thermometers next to the computer. When my ambient temperature is low, like in the 60s or maybe the low 70s, my 1070 performs better than it does when the ambient temperature is higher. So it goes back to, I think a water-cooled 1070 is going to perform more consistently, and it's going to beat a 980 Ti more often. So we're loading this up, and I apologize for making this video so long. Like, even I'm like, man, this is a long video. Like, even guys, I don't like to hear myself talk that much. You know what I'm saying? Remember, we were at 72 frames per second in this section, even with the 1070, and that's what we're getting now with a 980 Ti. But we'll see if when we get around here, if it goes up. No, it has not gone up. Let me double check that we're still at 144 Hertz. Because what's interesting is, I don't know if I said this earlier in the video or not, but last night, my 980 Ti actually outperformed the 1070 at Grand Theft Auto 5. And I didn't really want to tell you guys that was going to happen in this video. Partially because I didn't want to say it's going to happen, then it not happen, because again, we're doing a live demonstration and there has been a certain amount of inconsistency. Ooh, already went down to 48. This is looking rough for the home team, bro. You know what? No, we're going to keep it fair. I was going to turn the VSync on and off now, but I didn't do that till I got down there. When I tested this last night, my 980 Ti, when I was not recording it, when I tested this last night, my 980 Ti stayed above 60 frames per second the entire time, whereas my 1070 did not. My 1070 went down to 48 frames per second, and my 980 Ti was just like beasting above 60 frames per second the entire time. And I kind of thought that was going to happen in this video here, but it didn't. So now the 980 Ti is also trying to make me look like an a-hole. You know what, 980 Ti, I have spoken very highly of you. I have vouched for you. I have ranted on the internet for you. So you need to do me a solid and not make me look like an a-hole. Can we do that? Can we not make me look like an a-hole? Alright, we're already down to 48 frames per second. So when I did this last night, the 980 Ti did not go down to 48 frames per second. Let's turn off VSync. No, that was wrong. Not half. That was wrong. There we go. Alright, so now we're in the 70s. Although, if you remember, even with VSync off, that 1070, there we go, was in the 60s. Although that's in the 70s. Now it's in the 60s. It was like 62, I think, with the 1070 when we turned VSync off. I'm telling you, last night, the 980 Ti very, very decidedly was outperforming my 1070. Look at that. We're in the 70s for the frame rate, which is better than the 62 we were at earlier in this video at the start. Now we're at 64. I don't know. Despite the fact that the 980 Ti is not being the champion that I've kind of said it is, it's still not an issue where the 1070 is smoking it. You see what I mean? The 1070 should be smoking it. I think a water-cooled one would. All right, let's turn VSync back on and see if it stays above 60 now, which already it might. There we go. See, this is what I was experiencing last night with the 980 Ti. It never went into that 48 frames per second stuff at all. It was doing this. It was in the 70s the entire time. All right, remember, this is VSync on, the same settings as the 1070. I need a car, and usually it's easier to get a car than this. Although last time with the 1070 I did use a quad bike, so we'll do that. If you're still watching the video, keep watching so we can see how this ends up. Alright, we did go down to 58 frames per second just now. This is the worst part of the performance down here, which is why I'm trying to go down here. It's this exact area over here that can be bad. Alright. See, this is VSync on Yeah, it goes down to 58 a little bit, but this is about as good as the 1070, right? It's as good or better. And the 1070 is supposed to be the more superior card. Now, what I could do, maybe what I could do, should do, would do, is what a lot of YouTubers would do. Instead of a big long demonstration like this, to include the part where they show the driver installation. A lot of them would just run the benchmark, because you do. This is why a lot of your YouTubers run benchmarks. All right, where is the benchmark anyway? You go into the graphics. So run benchmark tests. You press the Y button, right? You can actually do that. And if you do that, you don't have to screw around with playing the game and trying to recreate the same scenario. It's a canned benchmark. And I ran it for the Division. I didn't run it for this with the 1070, so I don't know what good it would do to run it with this game on the 980 Ti. So I probably won't run the benchmark now, but most YouTubers would just run the benchmarks and write the numbers down and see what happens. But this is real gameplay. This is actually driving around. All right, let's get in the helicopter. But this is how it played for me last night, where it never went down to the 48. But when we turned VSync off and on with that 1070, it also went to about this range. As far as which looks better, I don't know. So this is a weird thing. I think I don't really like how my Founders 1070 looks, if I'm honest. I don't think my Founders 1070 looks that fantastic. As far as like the image on the screen, I feel like the image on the screen is a little basic. It's hard to explain. It's a more interesting and exciting picture when I use the Zotac 1070 versus my Founders 1070. And I don't know, between the three, I like how this 980 Ti looks. I actually really do like how the Zotac looks. I don't really like how the Founders looks, and that'll have to be like a whole nother video. Because it's not just about the GPU. There are things on the PCB which can have an influence on how the game ultimately looks. I've talked about this before. I have two different GTX 960s, and I have a 2 gigabyte and a 4 gigabyte, and they're on different kinds of PCBs, and they look different. All right, my 2 gigabyte card is a For the Win from EVGA, and it has more gamma, right? So like if I have a game on one of those 960s, I might have the gamma set for 80%. All right, on the 4 gig 960, the gamma is set for 80%. But when I play with the For the Win, 80% is like really washed out and way too bright. So then I got to go down to 60%. I got to go down 2 clicks. It's usually about 2 to 4 clicks. You know, it usually takes like a 20% difference in gamma in games. So that's one small, like, objective, concrete example. But there is something about the same GPU, whether it's a 960 versus a 960 or a 1070 versus a 1070, where there are differences in how it can look depending on other factors. And that's something I've for sure noticed. My Founders 1070, I've thought about water cooling it, but the thing is I don't really like how it looks. I don't like the image of how it looks. So what I think I might do is I might try the EVGA GTX hybrid, the GTX 1070 hybrid card, and see how that looks. See, this performance with a 980 Ti, while it hasn't perfectly stayed above 60 frames per second, it hasn't really been that much worse than the 1070 either. Now again, when my 1070 wants to play ball, my 1070 smokes the 980 Ti. This has never been an issue where I've tried to say the 1070 is a bad card. But you know, I almost wonder if the ambient temperature in the room is just enough to be affecting this 980 Ti. Because I'm telling you, last night, especially in GTA 5, every single thing I did doing gameplay, doing the exact same save file and kind of the same things, the 980 Ti beat it every time. Like, no questions asked. The 980 Ti was beating my 1070. As you can see, we're at 82 degrees. 82 degrees is hot. You know, that's not a small temperature. And yet, at 82 degrees, this is playing just as well as that 1070 was at 71 degrees. So this is 11 degrees hotter and playing just as well. And then the core clock is 500 megahertz slower and playing just as well. I don't know. I mean, it does go back to, again, I don't think the 1070 is a bad card, and I know I'm repeating myself at this point in the video. I don't think the 1070 is a bad card, but I don't see it constantly smoking the 980 Ti, especially when you air cool it. Alright, so if you guys have a G-Sync monitor and you buy a water-cooled 1070, I think a lot of the things I've complained about, you will never notice. It will never be an issue. But if you're like me and you use a normal monitor and an air-cooled 1070, you might have some complaints. You might not. I think a lot of people are going to give the 1070 a pass because the 1070, the price that it's at and then the performance it gives, I think people will give it a pass for that. I think it's kind of a shame because I think it needs to consistently beat the 980 Ti. I mean, that's what people were sold, right? People were sold a, you know, on the hype or on the marketing or whatever. They were told that this is a card that costs less than a 980 Ti did and it performs better. And I think it needs to do that. I think if Nvidia is going to say it performs better, it needs to actually perform better. I mean, you shouldn't have to water cool it to get it to do that. I don't know. I don't want to waste your time, guys. I'm mildly disappointed. Like, I would have loved it if in this video, in this live demonstration, the 980 Ti had beaten the 1070 at this game like it did last night, because I felt like that very effectively proved my point as to why I'm disappointed in the 1070, that an air-cooled 980 Ti would have actually beaten the 1070. I'm not... If I go back and watch the video, maybe the 980 Ti is actually keeping a better frame rate in this game. I'm not sure. They're pretty close though, right? Like I don't think it's what's the word? I don't think that the 980 Ti is decidedly beating the 1070. But last night it was. My 1070 flat out was not keeping up with my 980 Ti. Even though my 1070, by the way, was running at like 66 degrees. As I said earlier in the video. And I think if you guys could have seen that in this video, I think you would have gotten an idea as to why I'm so disappointed. I don't feel like the 1070 has lived up to what it was marketed to be. At least not in my experience. But no matter what, you're seeing that the 980 Ti is at least playing about as good as the 1070. I think at the start of the video in the division, the 1070 won, no questions asked. The 1070 at that video did not go under 60 frames per second, and it kept a higher frame rate. I don't know about the benchmark. I'll have to rewatch this video myself to see which card won the benchmark. But as you can see in real actual gameplay, an overclocked, aftermarket, air-cooled 980 Ti can keep up with an overclocked, aftermarket, air-cooled 1070. I don't know. And remember, the 1070 is inconsistent in the sense that sometimes the 1070 decidedly beats the 980 Ti, and then sometimes my 980 Ti decidedly beats the 1070. I'm going to have to go back and watch the part 1 and part 2 videos. Now, the part 1 video did not show any GTA 5 footage. It only showed the division. But part 2 did show GTA 5 footage. So I'm kind of going to have to aggregate it myself a little bit. And maybe I'll make a better video that's edited together that really shows things side by side. Because this video is probably an hour long at least right now. And so you're not seeing things side by side. I mean, I swapped cards and changed drivers for 15 minutes. So, anyway, here's where we're at. Sometimes the 980 Ti actually does a better job than the 1070. And sometimes the 1070 does a better job than the 980 Ti. And it's not supposed to be that way. The 1070 is always supposed to be better. At least that's what you would think. That's what we've been sold. And that's what a lot of YouTubers have been posting. I'm pretty sure that in most of the benchmark videos that YouTubers have put up, the 1070 always beats the 980 Ti. But that, in my real world experience, that just hasn't been the case. Sometimes the 1070 does, and sometimes it loses. So anyway, hopefully you guys have gotten some value out of this video. Hopefully you've learned something, or some curiosity has been satisfied. I would have loved it if this video proved without a doubt that one card was better than the other. At the very least, I had wanted to show you that for the most part, for the last 9 months, the settings that's been used in these videos, I've been able to count on the 980 Ti staying above 60 frames per second. But in this video, in my own video here, the 980 Ti is in the division. It didn't stay above 60. So if it had at least stayed above 60, that would have made me happier. It normally does. It didn't do it this time. I kind of feel like an a-hole there. So I feel like this video doesn't definitively prove anything. And normally for a video to deserve to exist on YouTube, let's be honest, we want it to prove something. We want it to prove 980 Ti versus 1070, this is the real winner. And I don't feel like this video does that. But at the same time, my real world experience with these two cards is neither one really has been the winner. And that's kind of disappointed me, because you would think the 1070 should be the winner. And it just hasn't been. So there you go, guys. Hopefully, again, this video has been of some value to you. I can't even sell it to you and try to act like it proves something, because I don't really feel that it does. But that's not always going to happen in videos, and that's not always going to happen in real life either. And I'm going to show you live demonstrations. I'm not going to try to force my video footage to back up something, right? Like, I'm going to show you how the chips fall. Now, what I think I am going to do is I'm going to run my air conditioner really cold one of these days, and I'm going to show you how my 1070 will, no questions asked, beat the 980 Ti when the ambient temperature in the room is cold enough. I think that might be an interesting thing to do, because again, the 1070 has more potential than a 980 Ti. The 1070 is at its heart a better GPU. It just comes down to you need to control those temperatures. Those temperatures are kind of hard to control, you know. But as you can see, 980 Ti, good card. And I think that a lot of 980 Ti owners, if you do end up finding yourselves getting a 1070, I think you're going to have the same experience as me. Unless you get a water-cooled 1070, I think you're going to see that, oh, 1070 is not that much of an upgrade, at least right now, over a 980 Ti. Maybe drivers will change that, though. You know, a lot of people say things like mature drivers. Well, these are young drivers for the 1070. But again, the video is too long, so AI Gaming 1776, I really hope this video has been of value to you. And if you guys have been following my channel for a long time, I show you everything. I don't screw around. I show you the processor, I show you the GPU, I show you the overclocks, I show you my real live findings. Even if they don't make for like a super cool video where I can say, oh, look at this, one of these cards definitely beats the other. What I'll do is I'll rewatch this though, and if I happen to notice that one card definitely beat the other, even if it was by a little bit, I think I'll point that out in the description. But again, one of the things that I do with my videos is I show you my testing methodology, and I show you what my experiences has been with the hardware and with the games, and hopefully that's something you guys enjoy. So I know I'm being super apologetic about this, but I really was hoping you guys could see some of the stuff I've seen. I have seen the 980 Ti definitively win, and I've seen the 1070 definitively win. But in this video, neither really definitively won. They were about as good as each other. You know what I mean? So I guess call it a draw maybe. So thanks for watching, guys. Like the video if you want me to do more with the Teenage Son. Teenage Son, do you want to be more involved with videos?
Yes.
Do you want to build a computer?
Yes.
If I let you build a computer, are you going to ruin it?
No.
Okay, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I've not... This stuff, I have to pay for all this stuff, so I have not been ready to let him actually build the computers yet. I've been making him watch me. So when you watch me build, how do you feel?
I feel like I'm ready to get in there and help more.
Do you feel like ripped off that I'm not letting you be part of the process, like actually touch the stuff?
Like whenever we did the full build back in January, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He actually watched me. Well, it was actually December. It was the last week of December. I did my first ever build not by myself, but I mean, like, I built the computer, and he was there watching. And yeah, I don't know, guys. Like the video if you want me to let a teenager touch these components that I've worked really hard to save up for and buy. How about that? If I tell you what, if this video gets 300 likes, I will actually let him do an entire build where I don't touch anything. But if this video gets 50 likes, I'll let him do a significant portion of the building on camera. So 50 likes and he gets to do most of the building. 300 likes, he gets to do all of it, even if he kills my processor. Even if he like static shocks a 6700K and destroys it, I will just let him kill my processor. Alright? So, alright guys, thanks for watching. Again, I know I'm apologizing my butt off for this video, but this is how real life works, alright? This is how real life works. 1070 versus 980 Ti. There's not always a clear winner. I have seen this card, the 980 Ti in the computer, last night beat this Zotac. No questions asked. Without me turning VSync off and on, the 980 Ti never went below 60 frames per second. I played the Division. It never went below 60 frames per second. Then I played a day, and I look like an a-hole because it goes below 60 frames per second. But what am I going to do? It's a live demonstration. I just got to live with it. Alright, so thanks for watching, guys. I do love you, especially if you watched the whole video. If you watched the whole video, in the comment section, type 73. Or actually, how about 76? That's a good one. AI Gaming 1776. Alright, Teenage Son, tell the good people to have a good night.
Have a good night, people.
And thanks for watching, guys. This has been AI Gaming 1776, and I also hope you have yourselves an excellent night. Thank you. Have a good one.